News First, face to face with Jayawickreme.
Good evening and welcome to yet another edition of Face to Face on this Monday morning, the 4th of March 2024. Bringing you face to face this evening, I'm Jayawickreme, coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios in Colombo as usual. And today we have a returning guest on our show, a very young politician who is very vociferous and also isn't shy about sharing his opinion with the society. He is former chairman of the Waligama Urban Council and also the chief organizer of the Waligama electorate for the Samagi Jana Balwege, Sri Lanka's main opposition, Rehan Jayawickreme. A very good evening to you, Rehan, and welcome back on the show.
Good evening, Jayawickreme. Thanks.
So, Rehan, let's get the ball rolling on tonight's topic of discussion. Tonight's topic of discussion will be politics of the South. And you have been the chairman of the Waligama Urban Council. You know how the grassroots level operates when it comes to politics. And we do not know, although the government keeps on assuring and reassuring the people that the presidential election will be held, there is still a lot of ambiguity on what sort of an election will be held this year. But tell me how the SJB is preparing its grassroots to win, if any election is held, how the grassroots are being structured to garner the votes and also the confidence of the people in order to make them believe the SJB way.
As a party, we've already started our party restructuring program from the grassroots.
Yes.
So, for example, we just finished the Dompi electorate, which is Harshana Rajakaruna electorate. We finished that on Saturday and Sunday. There were 133 Grama Sevaka wards.
Right.
So what we do is we form village level committees in each Grama Sevaka ward. So another example would be that we did the same in Waligama and the Matara district in January. And just at the top of my head, we have about 16 divisional secretariats, which also includes all these other Grama Sevaka wards, divisional boards. And we finished that too. So each week we have a different district and we're all assigned to different districts too. Obviously the organizer can't be there at all these meetings at once.
Yes.
So the pulse of the people seem good. Good in the sense they are suffering.
Yes.
I don't think in my short political career I've ever seen this level of suffering among people, where some people are even eating, some families are even having only one meal a day. So honestly, I haven't seen that type of suffering before.
Right.
The main thing they want is an election. So if it's a presidential election, they're okay with that. But they also say that there should be a parliamentary election either before or immediately after the presidential election, so that whoever is in power will have the representatives chosen by none other than the public. So my honest viewpoint is that right now, this situation, they should have the general elections first, so the people can choose who their 225 are. Because obviously that was the point in the Aragale and various civil activities that was going around for the past year or so.
Yes.
So there should be a general election. But the problem then again is that this is probably one of the only countries in the world which preaches democracy to almost every other country that we can imagine. But the president of this country hasn't still given a roadmap. He has been very vague. He has just said, you know, I'm going to have both these elections this year. But he should give a particular time frame.
Yes.
You know, September is when I'm going to call for presidential elections, followed by the general elections. Or he can say, I'm going to dissolve parliament in this month, and then we'll go to the presidential election next. So the fact that he is not even highlighting that to the public is a point of grave concern. And it's also a very big blow on democracy, because the government has already postponed local government elections. So it's very difficult to say which elections they'll have first, but I hope that they have either both together or the general elections first, followed by the presidential.
Right. So talking about the incumbent president, you said that he has been very vague about what the roadmap is, especially when it comes to elections. But earlier today we saw the president speaking very grandly on how they have passed 42 laws over the past 14 months, and overall 62 laws are to be passed. And he was elaborating his economic vision for the country, how they want to make Sri Lanka an export-led economy and so on. So in that aspect, he seems to be knowing what he is doing to a neutral viewer who does not know what is going on, or who is somewhat positive, a glass half full kind of person, might assume that the president is taking Sri Lanka's economy on the right path?
The president should first mention, out of those 42, did he mention if the Online Safety Bill and the Anti-Terrorism Act was included, or didn't he?
He did not mention. He just said that 42 laws have been passed over the past 14 months.
So first of all, we have to examine. We have to first examine what those 42 laws are, and then figure out how effective those laws are. That being said, he is still a mandateless leader.
Right.
I would have said that whoever assumed duties, whether it would have been even Sajith Premadasa, but I can tell you, I have the strong feeling that if it was Sajith who accepted it, obviously our conditions were not met, which is why he didn't accept.
Yes.
But I have this feeling that after speaking to the party members, that he would have maybe immediately dissolved parliament and gone in for a general election to give the people what they wanted during that struggle. But then again, when you speak about the president's economic vision, the economic vision that he shares is also shared among people that the Aragalia wanted out.
Yes.
Because the same ministers that caused Sri Lanka's economic downfall are also the same bunch that's with him now, holding different cabinet portfolios.
Right.
So that's why it's difficult to take him seriously. Which is why I think if he wants to be serious about what he's doing, he should obviously want a mandate.
Right.
But I think that the polling data shows that, not the polling data, the research data, the pre-election data shows that he's at a very low footing. So we really don't know what kind of distractions he will use to avoid going into election even. He could even go in for a referendum. But it's very difficult to take what he says seriously. The same way it's very difficult to take leaders who are mandateless, who have come in through the back door. It's very difficult to take what they say seriously.
Right. So we're talking about polling data and pre-election data that has been calculated. I cannot remember what the institution was, but there has been a certain calculation done on the mood of the nation and who the people believe the most with a certain group of people. And the NPP has made large strides in that arena. And it has, in recent months, come out in full force with them meeting international leaders, with them organizing a lot of Balamandal meetings and so on. So the NPP seems to be getting their campaigns right, or their scheme, in a very organized manner. So what is the SJB's stance on the NPP should it come to election season, and how much of a threat it would be to the SJB securing power?
First of all, I need to clear a misconception about that poll. I have great respect for Dr. Ravi, the person who heads that particular institute. But he's also very clearly mentioned in that particular report that the survey is done on a sample size of 500. Now, while that seems effective if you're looking at a lower scale of politics, I think when it comes to presidential level or general election level, I think the sample size must be much bigger. But because of the way a certain Indian media outlet made it seem, they made it seem like it was the official, survey sort of conducted. That being said, like I said, I have a great respect for Dr. Ravi. I follow his tweets regularly. I think he's done a lot of good work. But then again, the sample size is too small. And it's very difficult to even... I mean, my point is, even when we don't know when a presidential election or general election is, I don't think that's the time a survey should be conducted. I think a survey should be conducted on the current circumstances, maybe about 3 to 4 months before we know there's actual election. Now, when you speak about the NPP taking crowds to their rallies, I witnessed when they had the women's convention in Matara, they also had multiple busloads of people coming in from different districts, including Hambantota and Kalutara. But they make it seem like it's a district convention. Now, I'm not slinging mud at them, but the JVP has always been a party that shows a big amount of people in almost all of its meetings. They are a party, even when they got that particular 3%, they had the biggest May Day rally. Now, whether that will convert into votes, I'm not so sure. I can never say, but I'm not so sure. But coming back into the survey, I think we'll only know what the proper results would be once all the parties have officially named their respective presidential candidates. Because right now, almost everyone wants to be president. We have multiple businessmen throwing their hats, we have media personalities throwing their hats, and we have lots of people who want to become president. But at the end of the day, there has to be the nomination list that has to be submitted. So we'll wait and see. But it's going to be the definite fight is between the SJB and the NPP. That is not a mistake of our own. The reason the NPP is this powerful is because of the inadequate levels of support that we have received from certain other political parties.
Right.
But that being said, again, it's only because of the inefficiency of the SLPP and the UNP that the JVP has come as a force, which is why the SLPP is almost near ground level. The UMP still hasn't picked up. So obviously there has to be someone else that picks up. And right now that's NPP. So the fight is going to be between the SJB and NPP. But I'm fairly confident that if it's a general election that's going to happen first, the SJB will most definitely be the decision makers on who forms a government and who doesn't.
Right. So let's talk about the voters, because they ultimately have the power to appoint a president or appoint the 225 into parliament, a majority of the 225 barring those who will make it through the national list. Voters, back in the day, there was a notion where if you support a certain party, if your family has historically supported a certain party, you will continue voting for the same party. That party can do no wrong. There's a famous Sinhala saying, Kapuat Kola or Kapuat Nil. But after the Aragale and the various the social uprisings that came about, the people's eyes, personally to me, I seem, have finally opened up towards appointing responsible and accountable leaders. And many of those people include the younger generation, like you and I. But how does the SJB plan on convincing that younger generation, the first-time voters, the voters who want to see a tangible change in this country, that the SJB is the right option?
That's a very interesting question, and I was hoping that you might ask that. It's always very easy to identify a problem. It's the easiest thing in the world. But what is the hardest thing is to actually offer solutions. Now the NPP has brought about this tagline that the past 70 years is what has been a curse to this country. Now that's been said, but have you ever seen anyone listing out the things that have gone wrong within the past 75 years? It's very easy to say it. And it's easy for them to say it. But they have also been part and parcel of all of these problems we are in. They indirectly supported Chandrika Kumaratunga Bandaranayake, the former president, in 1994. They supported the candidature of Mahinda Rajapaksa to be the prime-ministerial candidate in the SLFP in 2004. They backed his government in 2005. They backed Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca as our candidate in 2010. They backed Maithripala Sirisena as president in 2015. And now, after the Aragale, it's a very easy thing to say, Unut Tekai, Munut Tekai, you guys are all the same. But when I went to my campaign meetings, one thing I said was, a tree, for example, doesn't grow by itself. You know, it's first a seed, becomes something else, and then it finally becomes a tree. If you look at a house, the house doesn't build itself. It's always a foundation first, and then you keep on putting slabs to whatever way you want to build. So, my question is, then hasn't the JVP also, or the NPP, been responsible for creating regimes that have destroyed the country? Okay, so that's my first contention point. My second point is that most of the youth that are supporting the NPP are those born in the year 2000 or afterwards. So they're pretty young. So you can't expect them and you can't talk to them about 88, 89. For me, I think of that as a failed exercise. Because I think there were things that both the government and the JVP, there were certain things that happened that wasn't right. And I had to be one to admit that. So we shouldn't harp about that. But what the SJB is doing right now is that we are approaching the youth to speak to them candidly about what their problems are.
Okay.
Why do they want to leave the country? Why do they go in search of greener pastures? Why? So that is something we need to first analyze.
Okay.
And then, if you notice, most of the youth that supported Gotabaya Rajapaksa and who are disgruntled with his leadership are the swing voters who have now swung towards the NPP.
Right.
Because now they are believing in the rhetoric that, all you guys are the same.
Right.
But I make a humble and sincere appeal to the youth. It's all right. Blame whatever political party you want. But find out the core reason on why you're blaming them.
Okay.
Find out the exact issues on why we have failed as a nation. Don't just talk about the problem, but offer solutions.
Right.
Create a youth manifesto. Give it to us, because we are meeting various youth groups. But don't fall for the populist narrative where it says, all you guys are the same, so we are going to vote for the other side. Because even though it may sound rosy, the people that you may vote in may be worse than 70 years worth of politicians that you have voted for in the past or your parents have voted for.
Right. So I want to touch on that, Rehan, just elaborate on that a bit more, where you said a youth manifesto is needed. We know that the SJB has a blueprint that is for developing Sri Lanka's economy. We know that you have a foreign policy that you might adopt. You have advisors who will give you their expertise and their knowledge on foreign policy and so on. So what is the SJB's plan for the youth of this country? What is the blueprint for the youth of Sri Lanka that the SJB plans to follow?
I think one thing that we are looking is we are looking at giving skilled youth the opportunities they deserve.
Right.
That being said, it is not the populist scheme of handing out government jobs, because our government sector is right up there when it comes to overemployment.
Yes.
And we can't handle any more, we can't give out any more jobs at least for the next 10 years, because we already have an influx of state workers that are dependent on the taxpayers' money.
Yes.
But that being said, it doesn't mean that it only has to be government jobs. We can approach different countries. We can look for job banks in those countries. We can look for things like skill migration. The government can get actively involved in skilled migration.
Right.
Whereas right now we are only focusing on housemaids and medium, not even medium tier jobs. Even the jobs that we are given to Israel, even though they are paid high, those are low tier jobs. But I'm talking about software engineers. I'm talking about engineers. I'm talking about mechanics. I'm talking about people who are very well versed. For example, nursing is a big thing that Australia is looking for now, and other countries. Caregivers,
yes.
Social services. So what we would do is that we would liaise with various embassies, various countries, and we will find out if they need skilled youth, advanced skilled youth migration.
Right.
And that's the best I think we can offer the youth.
So
among many other things.
Yes. So I want to touch on this topic also, because you are from Waligama. You were the chairman of the Waligama Urban Council, and starting from Galle all the way to Matara, especially in the recent past, there has been a very huge influx of tourists, mostly surfers and so on. But recent reports have come to light, Rehan, that there are certain tourists who arrive on visit visas but are running businesses in those areas, and that is ridding locals of much needed revenue. And for one, that is illegal. You cannot conduct a business when you're on visit visa. And two, they are depriving people of valuable revenue or money that they could have either earned if these businesses did not exist. But instead, we are letting this happen purely because Sri Lanka wants to, I do not know, maybe show off numbers, high numbers of tourists coming in. That is what I personally believe. But we need to manage this shadow economy, do we not? Because regardless of how many tourists come, if that is detrimental for the economy of Sri Lanka, we won't be able to flourish. So what is your solution to a matter of that sort?
When I was the chairman of the Waligama Urban Council, there was a rule that I put in place where each and every person who wants to start a business has to have the basics. they have to have their trade license, they have to have their health license.
Okay.
And I never ever approved establishments that went against these guidelines.
Right.
Unfortunately, I was removed, and during that time, lots of tourists coming in from all over the world started, establishing businesses.
Right.
Now, my question is, can we go to another country on a tourist visa and open a business? We can't. We can obviously go into a business visa,
Yes.
invest with someone in that country, and go for a
Partnership of that sort.
partnership.
Yes.
But it is so easy for a tourist to come into this country and open a business. Now, if you talk about Ahangama, which is my neighboring electorate,
Yes.
it is full of unlicensed businesses. They have card machines where when you swipe the card, the money goes straight into foreign bank accounts. I have seen this firsthand.
Right.
Unfortunately, you need power to deal with these things, and I unfortunately don't have that particular power right now.
Yes.
Which is why I'm hoping to get.
But what is Rehan Jayawickrme's solution to this?
I mean, I would first of all identify. I have identified all these businesses in Veligama.
Right.
And I have spoken to a few owners personally, and I have said, you all need to fix this. Because if we come in, we are going to make sure that this is done in a fair and free manner.
Right.
And certain places have now started obtaining their licenses. So first of all, what I would do, Jamal, is that I would get, for example, my representatives in the Gaul district that I know that are into tourism, I would give them to give me a list, which I will then verify again with the divisional secretariat.
Yes.
I will do the same in almost each and every district in Sri Lanka, and I will identify my team will identify what these illegal businesses are, and we will give them a grace period.
Right.
We will give them about not years or not quarters or 6 months. We will give them 1 month.
Okay.
Get your act together, or we will report you to immigration. I'm not going to say that we are going to kick them out because we don't have that power.
Yes.
But we will certainly report to immigration, because this has to stop. Where else can you do this in the world? And this is creating a huge issue for the local business owners. And I'm not saying our local business owners are also correct in what they do. But this entire process of tourism has to be streamlined. And I once wrote this letter about maybe 7 months ago, addressed to the Ministry of Tourism,
Right.
where I gave out my set of proposals on how I think tourism should be developed.
Okay.
One major thing we can do is we can have a one-stop shop for tourism, or something done by the tourism board in all the tourism zones. Now we have a few now.
Yes, the hotspots.
Mirissa, Veligama, Unawatuna, Habaraduwa, Ahangama. I'm just giving you a few examples. And Arugambe from the other side.
East, yes.
I'm going to have that one-stop shop where anyone who wants to start a business can go into that one-stop shop. This is much like what Mangala Samaravira did with the Gamperliya program,
Right.
or Enterprise Sri Lanka, where most of these places were given licenses during a day. And if all the documentation is correct, give them their license. And also another thing that I would suggest that I think will be very impactful to this country is we should offer for the people that don't have the means of getting, now for example, you can't just get a liquor license, you've got to show certain things.
Yes.
For people who don't have that benefit, we could always give them a season license.
Okay.
A seasonal license, which can be renewed each year. Because when the southern season starts, the Arugambe season ends. When Arugambe season starts, the southern season ends.
Yes.
So you could give them a seasonal license where each season they will get a temporary license for them to sell their beer and wine. The government will also get a particular revenue. They'll actually get a thumping revenue. Everything will be on the books, nothing will be off the books. So I made about 7-8 proposals like that. So I still haven't got a reply for some odd reason. But if we do come into power, and if I am elected into parliament, and my pet subject is, things related to tourism, and, basically tourism, these are the changes I would want to make, because I think we are so underestimating the power of the money that can be bought into through tourism.
Yes. So touching on that, I know we are coming into the end of the show, but tourism is something that Sri Lanka has thrived on for many years, but we still have failed in some aspects to attract the big spenders. I was in conversation with Member of Parliament Shanakya Rasmanikya, who represents the Eastern Province, and he said that according to some of the data he has, an average tourist who stays in Sri Lanka for 10 days will only spend around $50, which would be around $5 a day, which is not a very significant amount. I'm pretty sure local tourists would spend even more. So what is Rehan Jayawickrame's plan to attract the big spenders into Sri Lanka's tourist hotspots? Because we know that they can attract, Sri Lanka can attract those spenders.
We have enough and more amazing hotels in Sri Lanka that can attract these kind of tourists every day for 365 days a year. The only issue that we have is that we have a marketing problem. We spend silly amounts of money.
Right.
Each government, when they come, they create a new logo for Sri Lanka.
Yes.
1 minute they'll call it Show Sri Lanka. Some now they call it Come Back for More. My question is more what? What have we offered to them? So we spend millions and millions of dollars on creating that one tagline. What I would do is I would make sure that the marketing aspect is handled by professionals, which is not done now, which is not what's been done. We all think that we can do it ourselves.
Right.
We all think that just by the government going in for these tourism fairs and all these things and ministers going for these, we think, no, ministers don't need to travel to promote Sri Lanka.
Right.
Ministers have to do their job, stay in the ministry, appoint good representatives. Now, for example, another good thing that I wanted to suggest was that each of these tourism areas, each district should have its own tourist council.
Okay.
Not just the north and east, they already have one there, I think. But each and every district where tourism is prevalent should have their own tourism council. Now, who should be in that council? People who have a proven track record of doing business that attracts tourists. All these ideas we combine. And we first make a national tourist plan, which we don't have at the moment. This doesn't take, it's not rocket science. You have a national tourist plan. And according to that national tourist plan, the minister shouldn't be given the power, or the relevant person shouldn't be given the power whether to authorize it or not. I think it should be put to a place like Parliament and endorsed and make it the national tourism plan.
Okay.
Not just make it a tourism plan by the Ministry of Tourism, make it the national tourism
Should be
plan.
a national policy regardless of which government is in power.
Absolutely. So these are just a few things, but there are so many more things that we can do. You know, I once went to this rice and curry shop called Manori's Kitchen or something.
Right.
It was a hole in a wall sort of place where you got to go in Nahangama.
Okay.
It's not even in a touristic area. It was in the house that the villagers were operating from, but they have got hold of the business so well that they serve on a minimum about 200 numbers of rice and curry to tourists a day.
Right.
They price a rice and curry at 1,300 rupees, but it's amazing. It comes in clay pots. And then I asked the lady, I said, now, how did you, basically I went there with two friends. And at that particular time, I'm sorry, I couldn't meet the owner, but I asked my friends.
Right.
I asked them, you know, how did this come about? And they said, no, a tourist came from abroad. You know, they fell in love with the particular village and they built a house in that village.
Okay.
And just as a form of inspiring the villagers to make money, they gave money for these people to start up. So we have enough and more people to help us start up. But it's just that the government involvement shouldn't be to create these fancy taglines and all these fancy things that they spend on tourism. Waste a colossal amount of money by going in for these trade marts, tourism markets and all that. They should focus on the basics.
I see.
And the basics itself will do the job. And let professionals do the job. Because one thing is that Sri Lankan ministers and Sri Lankan politicians think that they know it all. But I'm sorry to say, there is only a significant number of them that at least know only 20 to 30% of what they can know.
Right.
So then what do? You make sure you associate your people with people that
Who
do
do
know. So get help from industry professionals and let them do the job for you. All you have to do is sit pretty and watch the rest unfold.
Right, so my guest tonight was the former chairman of the Waligama Urban Council and also chief organizer of the Waligama electorate for the Samagi Janapala Vegya, Rehan Jayawickreme. Thank you very much, Rehan, for joining me this evening. A very expansive conversation from politics to youth unrest and developing youth in Sri Lanka, and also tourism, how tourism can be further developed in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for you tonight on Face to Face. Thank you very much for joining. Take care and good night.